There's this whole vibe in Kensington Market that feeds into the music that's created, even in this studio. So we've had bands that have recorded in lots of other studios internationally, and they say that when they walk into Kensington Market and they walk into this particular studio, they're energized by what they see outside. You know, they're sort of, it's it's life with a capital L. I mean, it's the whole pageantry of life is right there in front of you. And I think for most artists and musicians, that's inspirational.
Don't worry, little one, they will not soon forsake you. The lessons have begun, now let your fate overtake you.
There's always been a sound associated with Kensington Market. We started here in 1971. And we were looking for a rehearsal hall. We remember walking down Baldwin Street. Now that's back in 1971 when Kensington Market was quite the environment. What you got when you walked out in Kensington Market in that era was you had a fantastic mixture of hippies, beatniks, from going back to the 50s, so the older generation, but they felt comfortable here. You had that whole history and culture of the Jewish merchant that was still alive and vibrant. You had the Portuguese moving in and the insults going back and forth across the street, and a little bit of rivalry. And you had fantastic food, of course. That was probably a magical time. It kind of went over our heads because we were young. We didn't notice it. But when I think back now, as to what we walked into, that was probably a pretty magic time for Kensington Market. It was right on the edge of sort of the kind of real, natural street energy, you know, carnival atmosphere of the merchants and the people busking and playing. And all that stuff was new back then. Nobody had seen this stuff before. It was only in Kensington Market.
This is Center Island, 1969. These are myself and a bunch of friends. That's our first store, and that's me. It's Patricia. That's my oldest son, Peter. And he's 54 now. This is Rosemary Kelly, who came up with the name for the store, Courage, My Love. Well, I remember when we opened the store, people would come and ask us, what are you doing? And they thought we were, you know, running some kind of very strange, weird hippie store, and immediately left when they saw what we were selling. But
I think our art or visual pleasure is really important in our store, and that everything should have a touch of integrity to it.
When we moved to Kensington, the word vintage wasn't used at that time, used clothing. We sort of had the market to ourselves for about 5 years. Nobody was doing it.
We searched literally all over the world for interesting things for our store.
Actually, Pat and I first met on Augusta Avenue.
75 Augusta Avenue.
At a store called the Nickel Bridge. And they were bringing stuff from Afghanistan and India. And it was very interesting. It was the only store like that in Toronto. And it definitely was the hippie start, or the start of hippies in Toronto.
Over the years, it's become a very specific shopping district. Like if you go to New York, there's the Diamond District and the Flower District in Kensington Market on Lower Kensington Avenue. We have the vintage clothing district. There's probably a greater concentration of vintage shops there. When I came here in 1970, it was sort of adopted by the arts community in a way, and people loved it. And it's had that whole character to it since I've been here. It's had an art character to it. So when you see graffiti, not crappy tagging, but art graffiti that there is, that's a continuation of that whole thing. When you see the people selling things on the street, and lots of people do that. When you see the guy who plays the didgeridoo and the drums at the same time, and sells CDs of it, like that's part of this ongoing engagement with this neighborhood, with the arts. It's part of this whole thing. And culture is a big deal, and Kensington is a cultural place.
Hey, ho, let's go. Hey, ho, let's go. Hey, ho, let's go.
It's weird. It's always been a mix of sort of like hippie, punk rock. There's always Exile and places like that. But Courage My Love has been here forever, selling beads and incense and kind of hippie stuff. And though the punk and hippie culture sort of knocked heads a little bit, it seems like here they were all intermingling, and the Jamaican community, and just I think what it is it's the kind of energy that happens if it's Haight-Ashbury or it's Yorkville back in the '60s or whatever, is because it has that energy, it draws people to it, and it just creates this cycle where the energy begets more energy like that. It's creative, it's slightly aggressive, it's slightly pushing the boundaries a lot, and so it just vibrates. It just becomes this hub.